There we go.
Yeah, there you
All right, so Mike, it's all yours. Just eat it.
Uh, Good morning, I guess it still is. This is Mike O'Grady with Legislative Council. I'm gonna walk you through H 475, an act relating to establishing an equitable pricing system for production. So milk pricing in Vermont and most of the Northeast is based on what's called the Federal Milk Market Order number 1. And that milk market order, it's a rule that's adopted by the milk market commissions, which are part of the USDA. And it has a complicated formula within it for how much a farmer or a co-op is paid for the milk that they produce and sell. Often the market order system, the price, not that it can be manipulated, but it's subject to forces, which can drive down the price that is paid to farmers. And one of the things that it doesn't necessarily address is the cost of production. So at the time that prices are driven down, costs of production might actually be up. A farmer might be selling at a loss under the milk market order program. Other states have attempted to address that issue by establishing what are called over order premium payments. And it's when a milk commission in that state has authority to say, in addition to the federal milk market order, the state is going to assess a certain amount on every 100 weight of milk. 100 weight is 100 pounds of milk, and that's how milk is generally metered, measured for purposes of sale. So other states put this over order premium on the milk, and it is then generally goes back to agricultural programs. But there are constitutional issues with how the premiums are set up. And a couple of years ago, the General Assembly established a study committee called the Task Force to Revitalize the Vermont Dairy Industry. And one of the things it looked at was how to do an over order pricing system, tiered system. And it focused mainly on the system in Maine because one of the primary dairy consultants in the Northeast is Dan Smith, and he works like literally down the street, and he was a legislative counsel. He and Senator Starr established the Northeast Dairy Compact, but Dan helps Maine with their system. And what Maine does, first, it gives the General Assembly the ability to set these over order premiums. And to set a tiered pricing system. And that's what H 475 would do. It would establish a tiered system to set an equitable minimum price that milk handlers shall pay to milk producers for milk processed and manufactured in the state. The pricing shall be based on the milk producer's cost of production, including the cost of environmental compliance unique to Vermont milk producers. One of the things that the task force to revitalize the dairy industry did is it did a very basic analysis of the environmental costs that Vermont farmers face that other farmers in the Northeast do not. And it added about $1.50 to $2 to the cost of production per 100 weight for milk. And that obviously is a concern. And now that was, I basically did that estimate. So I have an economics degree, but there's a reason I'm an attorney. And so JFO did an analysis as well, and they brought that cost down a little bit, but still there's an extra cost to Vermont farmers, cost of production, that is not addressed under the federal milk market order payment program.
So is that, whatever that difference is, $1.50 or whatever it could be, is that incremental to other states? Or would other states also have costs of production that are unique?
So, yes, I mean, some, to a degree, all states are gonna have some state-based cost of production. But when you look at Vermont and the Clean Water Initiative and what it has required farmers to do that other states don't require their farmers to do, it adds an enhancement to the cost of production. And then you have to build in things like wetlands law, and wetlands law in Vermont is more protective than wetlands law in other states. So you have to address the fact that that's going to be an enhancement to the cost of production each year. And when you go through all of the requirements, it adds up. And it's not comparable to Maine or to other states in the Northeast. So this would it would be intended to address that as part of that tiered pricing system, that the cost of production in Vermont, specific to Vermont farmers, would be part of that tiered system. And then there's this provision, again, based on Maine, if the market pricing under the milk market order does not sufficiently cover the cost of productions, the bill would require an overorder price enhancement to be paid to Vermont milk producers. And Maine has this, and to ensure that tiered pricing does not generate incentives to overproduce, the bill would establish production tiers for small, medium, and large farms. And that's important because it's a supply cap, or effectively would be a supply cap. And that is something that has been long discussed in Vermont, but has not been implemented. Well, it has been implemented, but usually through the co-ops and not through the state. And so this would be a state-driven cap to ensure that the over-order pricing would not lead to an incentive for people to just keep producing milk in order to get that over order benefit.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think in Maine, and I can make a phone call and get educated real quick, but I think in Maine, on the larger producers, they may have 1-2 months worth of this over order pricing. So they would, it's on a sliding scale.
Yep.
So they would look at the milk forecast and try to pick which months they could be in, whereas somebody that was milking 100 cows could be in all year because they wouldn't hit their, and the bigger farms would pick, the best, help them during that crop time.
Right, and it's true because of the supply limitations, and the larger farm is going to exceed that over-order premium, but they can still keep producing. They're just not going to get the premium.
Just don't get the premium. Now, Maine is a milk deficit state.
Correct.
So
and it has a fairly limited market because it only borders really one state for purposes of milk supply, and it's not coming from New Hampshire. So they have to they're generating their milk within their state, and they're not generating enough.
They don't, they can't. Oakhurst is essentially their biggest, and that's now owned by DFA. And do they collect money on that milk that comes from Massachusetts?
So this is something I haven't discussed yet. In order to pay for the over order premium pricing, there is a fee levied on basically all packaged milk that's sold in the state. And the fee is a sliding scale too. If the cost the basic price being paid to Vermont or Maine milk producers is $19, the fee on the packaged milk is X, but if it's $14 or $18, it's Y. For example, if the basic price is $16.50, the milk handling fee is 36 cents per gallon. If it's $19.50, the milk handling fee is 12 cents per gallon. And that money is collected, and because of a Supreme Court case, it doesn't go into a special fund, it goes into the general fund in Maine. And then the Maine General Assembly has to basically dedicate that through the general appropriations process for use for the overorder pricing.
So the middlemen, the processors here aren't affected by the requirements. Does the middle
I
go?
mean, to the middleman being the grocer or the retailer, they collect the fee, the package fee.
Yeah, I was thinking, well, okay, yeah, so there's obviously many different steps in the process, but the money is being paid ultimately to the farmers.
Ultimately, but that's because of the Scalia decision and the Creamery case out of Massachusetts, because it's assessed on out of state and in-state, but the premium was only being used for in-state in that Massachusetts case. The court said, well, that's just discriminatory. You're discriminating against that out-of-state by charging them a premium, but then giving the in-state that benefit, which gave the in-state an advantage over the out-of-state. And the court said, oh, you can't do that. That just advantages the Massachusetts milk producer over all of the out-of-state, which included Vermont producers at that time. What Scalia said in that decision, but you can just tax it like you tax anything and then collect that revenue and dedicate and put it into the general fund and then go through the normal appropriations process. And so that's what Maine does. They have the fee, it goes into their general fund, but they have a dedication to use that money for the overorder premium for their milk producers.
Question, counsel, what is packaged product?
Well, you have
What's
to,
that definition of packaged?
it's in Maine, it's milk that is fluid milk that is for retail sale.
What could it be, butter or cheese?
You can
or
do
just
that.
milk?
You can try to do that. I have tried to do that. It's harder than it seems because it's not a one-to-one comparison. You can't say that like a pound of butter is the same as a half gallon of milk. So I have tried to do it and it's hard.
Can't even think about it, let alone try to do it.
Oh, I can.
Go ahead.
So to lower the fee placed on fluid milk, I would put a fee on all products that are dairy or call themselves dairy.
That's another can of worms.
Well, hey, Nutsweat wants to call itself oat milk or almond milk. You know, it's time to collect, but I would love to collect some money from Tillamook, from Vermont. Just might be saying, I don't.
But I have drafted a bill in the past that would have put the assessment on all dairy products sold in the state. But and to just introduce the issue, it was just 5 cents per product. But that doesn't, it's not an equitable assessment because
I understand.
a 5 cent assessment on a yogurt cup versus a 5 cent assessment on a gallon of milk is not the same, proportionate assessment. Even though some of the yogurt is now almost as expensive as like a half gallon of milk. And
but it's value added.
right, it's value added. It has to go through, it has to be, but milk is arguably value added too, like skim milk. That requires processing. It requires,
And they take the cream and put it in the.
right, right.
ice cream.
So when you try to go through an equitable, proportionate assessment on all packaged dairy products, it gets complicated quickly. That's why Maine and other states, it's on the fluid product.
Representative Burt.
Thank you. Counselor, if, so you're looking at doing a percentage of the, you know, the, whatever the retail price would be, like say it's a gallon of milk is $4.50.
You can do it percentage wise. Maine just sets the actual cents, the actual fee to be assessed based on what the price of milk is underneath the market order.
Seems like, I mean, thinking about trying to make it work for all the different products, if it's, say it's 5% on a gallon of milk, right, at
Right.
$4.50. And then you got, let's see, what's a quart of Stony Field?
Like the cream.
Yeah, or the, you know.
The yogurt.
Is how much now?
So like,
$5 and maybe more.
8 or something, so, and that quart is maybe the equivalent of, you know, I don't, but if it's a percentage, it seems like it would actually get close to being in line without having to get complicated.
yeah, I mean,
gonna get close.
it's definitely something to look at. I have looked at it and it just kind of breaks down when you start moving into the different types of products, like shredded cheese, like it doesn't have that proportional relationship.
I mean, it's, yeah, I'm curious to actually look at how much milk went into the shredded cheese. And, you know, because the cost of that product is gonna be directly related to how much milk went into it.
Right.
Last week, Ben and Jerry's said, 1 tanker load of cream. 10 tanker loads of milk.
And if you look at what a pint of Ben and Jerry's is, I mean, it's gonna get close to being the same.
I,
At 5%, you're gonna get darn close, and that's great, because you're getting 5% on the chocolate chips too, to help supply the dairy.
I'm all for it.
But
Chocolate.
I just wanted, like, this is exactly what this bill would require you to discuss and decide. Like how to do that, what to assess the per product fee on, how to set up the tiered system. It's exactly what you would do. You would need a milk commission that was affirmatively active in managing this.
Do we have a milk commission that is not active?
You have a milk commission right now. They have authority to actually do this if they wanted to, but they don't want to.
It's statute, they have that authority.
They have that authority. One of the things that the task force to revitalize the dairy industry did is it came up with draft legislation that directed them to do this. And instead of doing that again, this bill would just do it.
Who sits on the commission?
Well, the secretary is the chair. There's 2 farmers. There's 2 legislators. John, Representative O'Brien, are you on?
Yeah, Derek Bobby was.
And Senator Starr was. I don't know who currently is on. And there's a producer. There might be 2 producers.
Was it Clifford on it?
Yeah, Clifford's on it.
Clifford.
And the Harrigans were on it for years, but I don't think they're on, I don't think Harold's on it.
So just one thought I have, and then if there are any other questions, we can start to look at the other 2 bills, but to, if you wanted to capture other products and not just fluid milk, could the handling fee be assigned earlier in the supply chain?
That has been discussed before. And so instead of it being on the fluid product at a retail, that it be assessed, say, at the farm gate. The concern with farm gate assessment is that it just gets passed by the co-op back to the farmer. Because of the way that costs to run the co-op are assessed to all its members, the co-op theoretically would just put that cost into basically lowering the milk check to the farmer.
So it wouldn't be passed on to the consumer. Mhm.
It could be, that's the other kind of, if you talk to certain past senators and their feelings about the co-ops and how that they are charging cost, they have suspect beliefs about how the co-ops collect and then assess. I'm trying to be really careful here. And
They'd
so,
increase the stop charge, or they'd have a add-on to the trucking fee.
right, there would be an add-on to the milk check every check. In order for the co-op not to lose money / profits, even though the profits are supposed to go back to the members.
You see how that could happen.
Question, a hypothetical. So dairy was slated to have a great year this year if the tariff war hadn't started, and now it's in question. If we had a great year and we didn't get below the threshold price, but we were collecting that 5 cents or whatever we deem it as, and you've got a chunk of money in the general fund, does that stay there and stack up? Or is it the general fund to do with what they want?
So that's first, if you have a great year and the cost goes up. So in mean, their top tiers, if it's 21 or more per 100 weight, the fee is only 4 cents per gallon.
Mm-hmm.
And that does go into the general fund and it gets managed. And you're right, because if at 21 or above, the tiered pricing over order will drop. And that all of that money won't be used for the tier, and then it gets used for the general fund. It's not dedicated. And that's because of that Scalia decision.
Could we say if that scenario happens, which those prices that Maine has on there now, I hope those are old prices because they don't stack up today.
They do change the price system pretty
Okay.
regularly.
So, but if we had it set up, so dairy had a great year, they're 1 in 7 great years. Maybe we could tie into it that money went back into Vermonters feeding Vermonters,
Universal school meal.
universal school meals, universal, crop cash plus, into the the flood resiliency, the Farm Security Act.
Right, you could do anything with that money. The concern is that if you start using it for multiple programs that are other than the tiered pricing, you create a program kind of like the property transfer surcharge, which is supposed to go to VHCB, but never does in total, right? Because you send it all or half of it generally to other programs. And so that's the concern by when you start carving it up, does it create the assumption that it will always be carved?
Can you put it in statute, or statute's changeable?
Right. Well, you like the VHCB revenue from the surcharge, that's in statute, but every year you notwithstand it and say notwithstanding that, they're not going to get their full amount. They're only going to get a percentage of that.
Okay,
We're hoping that this is the year that we actually do not withstand it. Let's see what happens. Craig, did you have a question before we go on?
Yeah, are there any other states besides Maine that are doing something along that?
Pennsylvania has an order, Virginia has an order.
Massachusetts doesn't have one?
Massachusetts,
They have something.
yeah, I have to go back and look at the report
So-
that I did.
What do those states look like?
So Pennsylvania does it, their Milk Market Commission does it. It's about 25 cents per hundredweight. They don't have it on the per package. They have it on the fluid. And there was a challenge to that, but because almost all of Pennsylvania's milk is from Pennsylvania,
They're right.
the Commerce Clause issue is not that big of an issue. And they basically pay the Maryland producers that supply into the Pennsylvania system. They pay those Maryland producers the overorder as well.
All right,
Just like this would pay New York dairy, right?
Right. I mean, and that's another thing about how this system was being discussed. It's like because the co-op has New York participants, members, there will be New York milk coming in and New York being bought by Vermont purchasers, processors. And so to avoid discrimination, you would be paying the New York farmers the overorder for their fluid
so
milk.
they would,
Not for long,
Why is that?
because Fairlife is gonna come online and then that huge cheese plant out in western New York State.
Well, that is, the New York milk processing market is much more vigorous right now than Vermont's market, and they are, whether it's Horizon with the chocolate milk plant in Buffalo or Fairlife or Chobani, it's like they have more options for places to send their milk.
did want to allow more time for this bill, this first one, because it's the most complicated and more, maybe, I don't want to say it's the most interesting, maybe that's just to me. But I would like to get to both of the other two. So why don't we move on and have you, Mike, pull up 477.
I thought I had it already pulled up. There it is. So 477 is an act relating to forest management harvest on state forest lands. And there has been concern that the necessary timber harvesting / management on state forest lands has been delayed. And there needs to be a way to bring those harvests up to schedule. The concern is that there aren't enough skilled laborers to do that work on schedule, and really how to get the state to do the work on a predicted schedule. So this bill would require the Commissioner of Forest, Parks and Recreation to develop a plan for reducing the number of delayed timber harvests. It would require the report to include a summary of the status of harvest on state forest lands, including the number of harvests that have not been completed by the initial scheduled date and the reasons for delayed harvest. Would require the Commissioner to propose how to reduce the number of delayed timber harvests, including whether additional staff at the department are needed to conduct the work. In addition, the Commissioner shall address in the report whether licensed private foresters could be contracted with to conduct the work necessary to reduce the number of delayed timber harvests. then will require the commissioner in the report to estimate the cost and benefits of any plan to reduce the number of delayed timber harvests, and including an estimate of the number of harvesting jobs that could be created by facilitating harvest at delayed sites. And the bill will require the commissioner to report to you about the program.
We were, those of us who went out to the logging site,
Little River.
thank you, Little River, heard that that was a project that had been originally scheduled for 3 or 4 years ago, or
2014.
2014. Okay, yeah, so quite a while. Did you want to, anything else that you wanted to add, Mike or John, that you?
No, I mean, one of the things that COVID hit the department pretty hard, and people weren't going out into the field, they were staying home. There was a change in leadership in some of the forest programs, like Oliver Pearson took over. There was a little delay when hiring him away from DEC, and like there were some things that complicated the timelines, but it really does come down to a staffing issue, and whether or not they have enough people out there to do the assessment and identification, and then it has to go through the plan for each state forest or land, and that generates conversation about what should be cut and what should not be cut. And that can delay things as well.
I mean, part of this bill is about just that tension between, if FPR is even willing, they're agreeable to catch up, but because of pressures like level funding, you can't really expand FPR at this point. Then
Right.
it just becomes this we never catch up kind of thing. So it seems up to the legislature to say, well, we'll create more positions, we'll privatize it, whatever that might be. This committee could certainly have that discussion, but sort of like where policy meets fiscal realities, I guess.
I mean, using private contractors, foresters, I think that's a viable alternative, but it's probably something the department chafes at a little bit. I think they probably would rather just have more foresters on the department staff. It's like, why pay for these people when we could have put them on staff? And so there's tension with that as well. And then there's the whole privatization contract provision that says you're not supposed to use private contractors when state agency staff can do the same unless you have the exceptions for use of private contractors, which you probably do because of the delay in the cuts. And so there's tension there as well.
So that's in statute somewhere, that philosophy is codified.
Privatization contract, yes.
How many different jobs the forester do?
They could have 20, they could have 100 clients. Their plans.
And so, state of Vermont has 374,000 acres of timberland. Some of it is designated no touching. So, you knock that acreage down. So some of it, they have 8 foresters on board. Now they have to go above and beyond when they're doing a plan on public land. And it takes them a long time, but perhaps even to have them write the plan, but have a forester go out and mark the trees. This is the site, they give that forester, here's your marching orders, and turn him loose to go out and paint the trees that are gonna get cut. I don't know a lot about it, and I want to learn more. But I could see a public-private partnership, because these foresters, you know, are used to working with a bunch of, you know, different lands and moving faster than we are at the state level because of constraints on the state level. But, you know, if they could,
Mike, and you know where money goes oftentimes, when current use came into being, because it put so much more work probably on county foresters, because they're sort of, you know, the managers in some ways, ultimately, of all those parcels. They have to at least okay the forest plans for them. Was there any money ever dedicated to that? Because that probably was a huge suck of capacity for FBR.
It's not an ongoing dedicated revenue source to my knowledge. I think. Oh, I have to go back and look at one of the breakdowns. I have to look. There is one of those assessments that breaks down. Some money goes to a couple different departments. I have to go look at it.
They must have taxed them in ways they hadn't been before.
Right, but probably what happened is that they were authorized as part of their base budget to hire a forester for every county. And to implement the current use requirements. And
Remember that graph showing current use has just had an upward trend for forest land too.
But like, did county foresters exist in each county before UVA?
I don't know, but I can check into that.
And we can, you know, these are good questions for FBR too. I mean, they would answer factual questions anyway. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Should I go to the next
Yeah,
one?
why don't we go on to the 478?
Okay. This relates to the plastic stickers, vinyl stickers, I should say, on fruit and vegetables that you buy at the grocery store. They are not required by federal law. They are not required by state law. There is federal law that allows for them, but it has basically, it just says it's voluntary for their use. So what they are made of is not dictated. They are supposedly supposed to be edible. But there's been questions as to whether they all are. Some plastic is edible plastics, food grade plastic. And so.
And adhesives too, right?
Pardon?
And adhesives too, which I
Mhm. And so how to regulate them has become an issue, especially as more food is compost. These plastics wind up in the compost bin and in the processing of those food residuals into subsequent products. Europe has been pursuing provisions that would require the PLU stickers, price lookup stickers, to be made of compostable material. So it doesn't create an issue with processing of food residuals, and it doesn't introduce plastic potentially into the human body. So that's what this would do. It's not required, it's not preempted by federal law. It's generally something that the food industry drives the requirement for. And it would require that if a wholesale or retail seller of food attaches a price lookup sticker to produce, the PLU sticker shall not be made of plastic and shall be compostable. Now, if you were going to flesh out this bill a little bit, you're going to have to define what plastic means for purposes of the prohibition, whether or not it's going to include things like corn-made plastic or other organic plastics. And then for purposes of the bill, compostable will mean the sticker is made of a natural fiber or meets industrial compost quality standards and uses a food grade adhesive for attachment to the produce. It would be effective July 1, 2028 to coincide with the EU's planned adoption of compostable PLA sticker.
In your research, did you see any other states sort of moving in this direction?
So this is not, it's not a novel idea.
Right, yeah.
So it's being discussed in other states and there are advocacy organizations that are looking to move this way as well. I can't remember a specific state where it's moving, but it's definitely being discussed in multiple jurisdictions.
They used to be just on bananas, then they were on avocados. Now they're putting them on tomatoes. Oh, what a pain. Yeah.
Taste it.
So they can scan them at the register.
Well, I know about them from a legal perspective because there's a case out of Washington State where they were required by the Washington State Fruit Board so that they could track where their fruit was going for purposes of marketing and trying to manipulate the market. And so it's not just
At the register, but
right.
Do you have any sense of what percentage are not compostable? I mean, because like in my experience, I feel like almost all of the stickers that I get, like if I stick something and it gets wet, it breaks apart. Like I feel like I have not or very rarely have encountered plastic adhesive on produce.
I don't know, but I definitely know from my research that many of them are vinyl.
Okay.
And that they're food grade, and they are meant to break down to an extent, but break down into what? And so that is what the concern has been.
so if we were interested in taking this bill, I think we'd want to find out more about obviously what materials are available and then hear from grocers and others who, if there's, if that's where the demand is actually coming from, what the impact would be on them.
I mean, the obvious concern they're going to raise is what the cost is. How much is this going to increase the cost of the use of stickers? If you have it tied to the EU and the population there, and it will likely mean that there will be a market for these compostable stickers. So somebody is likely going to enter the market for these compostable stickers, especially for the produce that's exported into the European market, assuming that continues.
Representative Nelson.
Yeah, are these stickers domestically made or are they imported? Cause I think put a change on, they said they're imported and they're tariff.
I don't know specifically, I don't know specifically where they are produced. I can look into that.
Okay, well, if we're interested in further conversations about any of these three bills, we'll have a chance to talk about that again later in the week. But if there aren't immediate questions, I think we'll just say thanks to you, Mike. What's that?
Are we coming back in the afternoon or
We
no?
are coming back, yeah, and the floor is going to be pretty brief.
At 4:30, we have the state of the garden.
Yeah, we're scheduled to come back at 3 into the committee.
Scheduled at 2.
You changed to 2?
That should be reflected on the agenda.
I'm looking at an agenda that I pulled up earlier, so
Oh, sorry.
if I update